Clara Morrison, a 28-year-old librarian from the small town of Greenwood, had spent her life quietly working behind the scenes, always feeling like there was something more waiting for her. On the outside, she appeared confident and composed, but deep down, she was struggling with self-doubt and a fear of failure that held her back from chasing her dreams. Though she had big aspirations of leaving her small-town life behind, she never found the courage to take the first step. It was a calm evening in Greenwood, the sun gently dipping below the hills, casting a soft golden glow over the sleepy town. The air was cool, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, and the distant sound of crickets filled the air. It was the kind of evening that made one reflect on the passing of time, and for Clara, it was no different. She had always known there was more to life than her quiet routine, but the fear of venturing beyond what was familiar kept her anchored. Clara worked at the local library, a job she loved, but that never seemed to truly satisfy her deeper yearning for something more meaningful. Every day felt like a step toward the future, but she didn't know what that future looked like. She had a passion for writing, a secret ambition she kept hidden from the world. She spent her evenings scribbling away in notebooks, writing stories she thought would never see the light of day. Despite her insecurities, Clara had a quiet determination to succeed. But her self-doubt often stopped her from taking risks. The idea of leaving her hometown and pursuing her writing career felt like an impossible dream. It wasn't just about the fear of failure. It was about disappointing her family. Her mother had always hoped that Clara would settle down, stay in Greenwood, and live a quiet, predictable life. But Clara knew in her heart that she was meant for more, though she wasn't sure what that more was. Everything changed one day when Clara came home to find a letter waiting for her. It was from a prestigious publishing house in the city. She had submitted a manuscript of her novel months ago, unsure whether it would even be considered. The letter was thick, official, and sealed with a stamp she recognized. Clara's heart raced as she opened the letter, her hands shaking with anticipation. As she read, her eyes widened in disbelief. The publishing house was offering her a contract. She had done it. She had made it as a writer. Her dream of escaping Greenwood and becoming an author was now a reality. The news felt surreal. She had spent years doubting herself, convinced that her writing wasn't good enough. But now she was facing a pivotal moment in her life, one that would change everything. Clara realized that this was her chance to leave behind the life she had always known and take a leap of faith. But the question was, could she do it? Could she leave her family, her hometown, and everything she had built for a dream she wasn't sure she could achieve? Standing in the quiet of her home, holding the letter in her hands, Clara faced the biggest decision of her life. Would she stay in Greenwood, where life was predictable and safe? Or would she take the leap into the unknown, chasing her dreams and forging a new path for herself? Her future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this was the moment that would define the rest of her life. Clara had always wondered if she was meant for something greater. Now she had the chance to find out. The question remained: would she have the courage to embrace the unknown and take the first step toward the future she had always dreamed of? Clara woke up the next morning, still holding the letter from the publishing house in her hands. The excitement from the previous night had faded, leaving behind a quiet unease. She had always dreamed of writing full-time, but now that the opportunity was staring her in the face, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The thought of leaving everything behind was terrifying. The comfort of Greenwood, the familiarity of her life, and the expectation of her family kept her tethered to her current existence. As she stood in her small kitchen, sipping her coffee, The phone rang, shattering her thoughts. Clara picked up, her stomach nodding in anticipation. It was her mother. "Clara, we need to talk," her mother said, her voice tinged with concern. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had a sinking feeling that the conversation wasn't going to be easy. Over the past few months, her mother had been subtly expressing her desire for Clara to stay in Greenwood. She wanted Clara to settle down, marry, and build a life close to home, just like the other girls in town. Clara had always brushed off the comments, believing that her career as a writer was the path she wanted. But now, with the publishing house's offer on the table, everything felt different. "Mom, what's wrong?" Clara asked, her voice shaking slightly. "I just received some news," her mother continued. "Your father's health isn't improving. The doctors say he doesn't have much time left. I need you here, Clara." Clara's breath caught in her throat. The words hit her like a ton of bricks. Her father's health had been declining for a while, but she had hoped he'd get better. That time would allow him a reprieve. But now the situation was more urgent than she had realized. I don't know what to say, Mom," Clara stammered, her world spinning. She could feel her life unraveling as she tried to process the gravity of the situation. The weight of her father's condition, combined with the offer of a dream job, was too much to bear. Her mother's voice softened. "I know you have your dreams, Clara, but right now, we need you here. Your father needs you." Clara stood there, feeling paralyzed. On one hand, she had the opportunity of a lifetime, the chance to leave Greenwood behind and pursue her writing career in the city. But on the other hand, her family was depending on her, especially in such a critical time. The tension in her chest grew as she felt torn between two worlds, one of ambition and the other of duty. The stakes were clear. If Clara chose to leave for the city, she risked abandoning her family in their time of need. She would be chasing her own dreams, but at the cost of her family's expectations and her father's final years. If she stayed in Greenwood, she would be giving up the chance to follow her passion. Stuck in a life she had outgrown, but she could be there for her father and help her mother through this difficult time. Clara's emotions were a whirlwind. Fear clawed at her, mixing with confusion and self-doubt. Could she really turn down such a life-changing opportunity? Was she selfish for wanting to leave? But at the same time, her love for her family and the need to be there for them overwhelmed her. As she hung up the phone, Clara stood by the window, staring at the quiet town outside. The letter from the publishing house still sat on her kitchen table, mocking her indecision. Her heart was heavy, and she realized that this wasn't just a decision about her career. It was a choice that would shape the rest of her life. The conflict was clear. Clara had to choose between two paths, each with its own set of consequences. She could pursue her dreams and follow her heart to the city, but at the risk of losing her family's support. Or she could stay in Greenwood, fulfilling her familial duties, but giving up the chance at the life she had always imagined. Her mind raced, trying to find a solution, but there was no easy answer. Clara had always been a planner, a person who liked to have control, but this situation was out of her hands. Life had thrown a curveball, and now she had to face the hardest decision of her life. Clara's life seemed to be stuck in limbo. She had made no progress in deciding between her career dreams and her family's needs. Every time she thought she had found a solution, something would make her second-guess her choice. Her father's condition worsened, and the pressure from her mother to stay in Greenwood intensified. But the letter from the publishing house remained on her kitchen table, reminding her of the life she had dreamed of, an opportunity she couldn't easily let go of. A few days later, Clara met with her best friend Emma in the town's cozy coffee shop. Emma had been her confidant for years, the one person who knew her better than anyone. As soon as Clara sat down, Emma looked at her, her eyes filled with concern. "You still haven't made a decision, have you?" Emma asked softly, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Clara sighed and nodded, feeling the weight of the question pressing on her chest. "I don't know what to do, Emma. If I stay, I can be here for my mom and dad, but I'll be giving up everything I've worked for. If I leave, I'll feel like I'm abandoning them. I don't know." Emma leaned forward, her voice firm but supportive. "Clara, whatever you decide, I know you'll make the right choice. But don't forget, you matter too. Your dreams matter. You can't live for everyone else forever." Clara appreciated Emma's words but still felt torn. She knew Emma was right. She couldn't put her life on hold forever, but the guilt of leaving her family behind was suffocating. As if fate were testing her resolve, Clara received another letter that afternoon, this time from her mother. It was short and direct. "Clara, we need you here. Your father's health is deteriorating rapidly. Please come home." The urgency in her mother's words sent a wave of panic through Clara. The very next day, Clara's father was admitted to the hospital. The news hit her like a storm. She rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding with fear. When she arrived, her mother was in the waiting room, her face pale, her eyes hollow. "He's not doing well, Clara. The doctors say it could be any time now," her mother whispered, clutching Clara's hands tightly. In that moment, Clara felt a deep ache in her chest. Her father had always been her rock, steadfast, strong, and full of life. But now he lay weak and fragile in that hospital bed. She knew she couldn't leave. Not now. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and endless worry. Clara found herself constantly torn between being by her father's side and her growing sense of guilt about the letter she had yet to respond to. Emma called frequently to check in, but Clara could barely find the time to talk. Her thoughts were consumed by the pain of watching her father deteriorate, and the weight of her decision felt even heavier. But as time passed, Clara began to notice that her mother, while grieving, was also quietly supportive of her pursuing her career. "I know how much this means to you, Clara," her mother had said one evening as they sat together in the dim light of the hospital room. "You've worked so hard for this. You deserve your chance." Clara was stunned by her mother's words. She had expected her mother to beg her to stay, but instead, there was a quiet understanding that Clara needed to follow her dreams. It was a moment of clarity. Her mother's encouragement gave her permission to pursue her own happiness, despite the circumstances. However, just when Clara thought she had found some peace, another obstacle arose. A new complication in her father's condition sent him into critical care. Clara's world was turned upside down again. She spent hours in the hospital, watching helplessly as doctors fought to stabilize him. It was clear that her father's time was running out. Amidst the chaos, Clara received a call from the publishing house. They were waiting for her decision. She could either accept their offer or let the opportunity slip away, but they wouldn't wait forever. Clara's heart raced as she listened to the message, her thoughts a whirlwind. She felt suffocated by the weight of her choices. The stakes had never been clearer. If she chose to stay, she risked losing the chance to live the life she had always dreamed of. If she left, she risked the heartbreak of being absent when her family needed her most. Days turned into weeks, and Clara found herself at a crossroads. As much as she wanted to go to the city and pursue her career, a part of her felt guilty for leaving. The conflict within her was growing stronger, and each passing day only added to the pressure she felt. Her best friend Emma continued to be a source of strength, offering a listening ear whenever Clara needed it. But even Emma, who had always been so supportive, was beginning to feel the weight of Clara's indecision. "Clara, you need to make a decision. The longer you wait, the harder it will get," Emma said one afternoon, after Clara had shared her conflicting thoughts yet again. "I know," Clara replied, her voice heavy with regret. "But I don't know how to choose. How do you leave when everything you've known is slipping away?" Emma paused, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes we don't get to have both. We have to choose what's best for us, even when it's hard. But whatever you choose, I'll be here for you." The truth of Emma's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Clara realized that, despite the heartache and uncertainty, she needed to make a choice. She couldn't keep living in limbo, torn between two worlds. Clara stood in the hospital room, staring at her father, whose health had taken a drastic turn for the worse. The beep of the heart monitor seemed to echo in the quiet space, a stark reminder of how fragile time had become. Her heart ached as she saw the once strong man who had shaped her life now lying weak and vulnerable. For weeks, Clara had been living in this suffocating limbo, caught between the weight of family duty and the pull of her long-held dreams. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was the publishing house again, the same message. A reminder that the opportunity was still there, but for how long? She couldn't help but feel the crushing weight of the decision she had been avoiding. Her father needed her, but her dream was slipping through her fingers. The tension in Clara's chest grew with each passing moment. Every minute spent here at the hospital felt like a lifetime. The constant back and forth, trying to be there for her family, yet longing for a chance to build the life she had envisioned for herself, was tearing her apart. Clara sat beside her father's bed, taking his hand in hers. She had always imagined this moment differently. It was supposed to be peaceful, a time to reflect and cherish memories, but instead, it was filled with fear and regret. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Dad, I don't know what to do." Her phone buzzed again, the ringtone a sharp reminder of her opportunity, but this time it wasn't just the publishing house. It was Emma. Clara had been avoiding her calls all day, not knowing what to say. But this time, Clara couldn't ignore it. She swiped the phone open and answered. "Clara, it's time." Emma's voice came through the phone, steady but with an edge of concern. "You need to decide. Your dad is hanging on, and I know you're torn, but you can't keep waiting for the right moment. It's now or never." Clara's grip tightened on the phone. Her heart was in turmoil. She had hoped for some sign, some guidance from the universe, but it wasn't coming. This was her moment, her turning point. She had to make a decision. Either stay and keep living in fear of the future, or take the leap and chase her dreams, knowing the consequences of her absence. "Emma, I don't know if I can do this." Clara's voice broke. "What if I leave and something happens to him? What if he doesn't make it, and I'm not here?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Clara, you're not abandoning him. You've already done everything you can. He knows you love him. But you can't sacrifice yourself for him. He wouldn't want that. You have to live your life." The words hit Clara like a jolt of electricity. She knew Emma was right. Her father had always encouraged her to pursue her dreams, and yet, Clara had put everything on hold for him, afraid of leaving him behind. But now, as she watched him struggle for every breath, Clara realized that her father's love for her had never been about her staying behind. It was about her finding happiness and fulfillment, no matter what that looked like. Clara stood up, wiping her tears away. She needed to make this decision for herself, for her future, for the dream that had been waiting for so long. She turned to her father, whispering, "I'll go after my dreams, Dad. I promise you. I'll live the life you always wanted for me." As if hearing her, her father's hand tightened in hers for a brief moment, as if offering his blessing. A sense of calm washed over Clara. She wasn't leaving him behind. She was honoring his legacy by becoming the person he had always believed she could be. The phone call from the publishing house came next, but this time Clara was ready. She spoke with confidence, telling them that she was accepting the offer. The moment she hung up, Clara felt a rush of relief mixed with fear. She had made the decision. Now came the hard part, living with the consequences. The immediate fallout was both exhilarating and terrifying. Clara spent the next few days by her father's side, reassuring him that she would take care of everything. As her father's condition worsened, Clara faced the painful reality that she couldn't stay forever. She had to let go. The moment she dreaded had come, and she had to be strong. As she walked out of the hospital for the last time, Clara felt the weight of her decision lift slightly, but she also felt the sting of guilt. It wasn't easy to leave, but she knew that this was her path. Her father would always be in her heart, but she had to step into the future. It was her turn to live. The climax of Clara's journey was not just about choosing between her family and her dreams. It was about finally taking control of her own destiny. And while the consequences of her decision were painful, Clara knew that she was finally on the path to becoming the person she had always wanted to be. The stakes were high, the emotional intensity was real, but Clara had found the strength to face it head-on. Clara sat at her desk in her small but cozy apartment, the soft hum of the city outside barely reaching her ears. The contract for her first book deal was in front of her, ready to be signed. Her fingers hovered over the paper, but she hesitated. The journey had been long and filled with difficult decisions, but she had made it this far. She thought back to the day when she first made the choice to pursue her dreams over staying by her father's side. It had been one of the hardest decisions of her life, and even now, the consequences still weighed on her heart. Her father's passing had left an emptiness in her that she wasn't sure would ever be filled, but she had learned to live with it. Clara had come to understand that he would never have wanted her to sacrifice herself for him. His encouragement, even in his final days, had been clear. Live your life, Clara, and make it count. Now, sitting in front of the contract, Clara finally felt ready to sign it. She had spent the past few months in a whirlwind of emotions, grappling with the loss, the guilt, and the overwhelming sense of responsibility she had carried for so long. But she had also grown. She had learned to embrace her own dreams, her own path. She had started to see that the sacrifices she had made were not in vain, and that she had the strength to move forward. The publishing deal wasn't just a professional milestone. It was a personal victory. Clara had overcome her fear of failure, learned to trust herself, and finally stepped out of the shadow of guilt that had held her back. It hadn't been an easy road, but she had emerged stronger, more self-assured, and more determined than ever. As she picked up the pen and signed her name at the bottom of the contract, Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from her chest. She knew that this was just the beginning of her journey, but it felt like a new chapter was opening. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Clara was excited to see where it would take her. The phone buzzed on her desk, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Emma. "You did it." Emma's voice was warm and full of pride.